I derailed you, Cliff.
24.
That was
So.
my fault.
No, that's fine. I do want to say, I guess one of the things, like especially on like Facebook, I saw, and I'm sure lots of other social media areas I haven't been, where there are Shadowrun people talking about stuff. A lot of people talk about, hey, Bright, this is a Shadowrun movie, and I think that's where a lot of the biggest initial disappointment came from. And the stuff we're getting into is maybe a little bit deeper than the film really has it tried to go.
I disagree.
But
that's only in our circles, you know. Lots of
I
people
guess.
haven't heard of Shadowrun, and they watched it and went, "What?"
But the
Yeah,
Shadowrun question is an important one, considering our general audience, and that was the last. That was that other thing that I wanted to make sure that we talked about before we were done. I wasn't disappointed by that, like you're talking about, Mr. Johnson, because I had the feeling from the very beginning that this was not going to, like every time I heard people saying that, I was like, really? You think it's going to be a Shadowrun movie just because there's like orcs and elves with guns?
Yeah.
And magic.
Yeah.
But I mean, okay, that's fair to a certain extent. You know what I mean? Like we're the only other thing that kind of does that, so the comparison is going to be there. But
no, yeah, that's a fair point. It's natural to
understand.
go there. I agree.
Yeah, but but having said that, like after viewing the trailer, it was clear that that's not what this was.
Right.
Yeah, but I mean, we also see stuff. We see a bunch of cyberpunk type movies, like we see Blade Runner and we see all that stuff, because it's still kind of that world. It's just without the fantasy races. In this case, it's the opposite. So
I felt Blade Runner was more Shadowrun than Bright by a long.
Yes, but like both movies are within our
purview
sphere of influence. They're like one shift away.
Sure.
And so that's fine. You know, I'll expect a Shadowrun movie when it's a Shadowrun movie.
Yeah, agreed.
Mm-hmm. And that said, I'm not sure that I want a Shadowrun movie, because I'd be afraid of them just
fucking
totally. Yeah, because honestly, when it comes to like big films, as far as adapting things, like what kind of ratio do we generally have to expect for when they get it right, versus when they just absolutely frag it all to hell?
You know, it's
D&D
all about. It's what.
That doesn't bother me.
And
Mr. Johnson, that doesn't bother me. Like, I still like it when people, like, I would like to see someone give it a shot, just because I find that interesting.
I don't want a Shadowrun film. I want a Shadowrun like series, I guess.
Yeah, I think a series could probably do better.
You know, I don't think it's a matter of what or if. It's a matter of who makes it.
Yeah, but
like,
I guess my point
is, good writer, good director, good cast, good script. Yes,
it could be amazing. Yes, but you know, Bright could have been amazing.
Sure.
They had all the potential ingredients there if they just hired amazing people to do the actual craft of it. Besides, you know, some of the actors who did a good job, like Jacoby, basically.
I don't blame any actor for what happened, because, you know, you see a lot of actors in something where they're really good, and then you see them where they're really bad, and it really comes down to the director when it comes to an actor. I think they did the best with what they had, and I can find no fault in the actors.
I think Edgerton did more than the best with what he had. I think he did amazing.
He had a lot of crappy lines that he delivered really well.
Yeah.
And that takes some doing.
Yeah.
And Will Smith was not
what makes a good actor.
Crappy lines, even in the Will Smith context.
Stuff well too.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
It's true. You can tell he spent some time he took some time with those prosthetics to learn how to convey stuff.
I guess my point, the point that I was making was that that I'm happy to see people try a Shadowrun movie. It doesn't bother me when someone tries it and fails it. Like I don't expect anybody to get it right and to meet my expectations. They just recently did a World of Warcraft. I'm a huge World of Warcraft fan. The World of Warcraft movie didn't bother me that it kind of didn't scratch that itch. It doesn't bother me. It doesn't bother me that
The Last Airbender. Oh no.
That bothers you. Like you get something like that. It was so offensive to me.
Sure.
It was. Well, here's the thing. If you do it, it's okay to get it, but there's a risk that if you screw it up too badly, they'll never do another one.
Yeah, and I guess they step in and change things.
But then
like,
you've
what if
got
they make a
things like-
Shadowrun movie, and then we have dragons are walking around and going on runs with Shadowrunners.
It's
Is-
just
I
somebody
don't know, or some other random.
I don't know.
strange thing.
Spider-Man's been rebooted like 18 million times.
Yeah, but
Shadowrun's not
Spider-Man.
Spider-Man.
Yeah, Spider-Man comes from what? How many decades?
I mean, that's fair.
of
There's a lot more.
stuff, and
yeah.
there's so much merchandising potential. Shadowrun comes from, let's face it, a small, low-profit industry with a percentage-wise smaller income base. Your payoff is just
Yeah.
so much smaller.
I mean, that's fair. I don't expect there to ever be a Shadowrun anything, really.
I do. I
You
think
know,
I think it's a matter of time.
look, they made
can be.
they made a Guardians of the Galaxy. Okay,
That's another fair point.
they took Iron
Ant-Man.
Man. They launched the Marvel flagship.
Yeah,
with
Iron Man was almost
before
nothing.
that movie.
Yeah, nobody
he
cared
was
about
like-
Iron Man.
He was like what, third, fourth in line when you thought of Avengers. He was the guy in the suit, right?
Right,
The one that looks like a ketchup in a mustard bottle.
right.
And now like fucking everybody knows about
Yeah.
Tony Stark.
Those are fair points. I will concede.
It's about the kind of pedigree you have behind you,
Right.
and one of the reasons that's so
All you
hard.
need is one
Oh, please.
geek.
But the problem with that is, when you want to make a movie like that, you have to secure a budget. You have to secure an audience. When you look at Marvel Comics, they were like, hey, we can make a huge movie based on superheroes, and if we do it right, we're going to have millions upon millions upon millions of dollars from millions of fans, and we can build a whole big vehicle out of it. Shadowrun, you have a harder time selling our audience because there's
But
not as much.
in that way, Bright tells us that we didn't need to, and that's what I was saying earlier. Is you have somebody who goes like that'll never work, but then sees how Bright absolutely worked for no reason. You know what I mean? Like other than you threw all these fantasy things in an updated setting, and there you have like a bunch of people now clamoring to say, well, if they can do it, why can't we?
So if nothing else, it shows that, hey, if this
Proof of
crappy,
concept that you can make.
if this crappy movie was able to succeed with these elements, can you imagine if we had a good one with a pre-existing audience? Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe.
That was my thought. Because I mean, look at the Rotten Tomatoes scores, right? I mean, it is absolutely crushed by the critics, but people don't care. You know what I mean? Like they watched this and they went, "That was fun. I liked it." Will Smith. You know what I mean? Like that's it. Like they don't need good movies in order for people to like it. So good. I'm glad.
That's
it's not failing. It's not failing because of the fantasy elements, right? It's failing because of the crap writing, and people liked it anyway enough that the fantasy elements were there that like people might say, "Oh, well, that's great. Let's try that again."
The urban fantasy concept, I think, was really good. There's a lot there that could be, like, people want to see that, I think.
And also, like what Supernatural, right? And shows like that, like that are doing kind of like fantastical stuff in modern settings. Like we should have moved on beyond you can't do that or that won't sell.
We're in the Game of Thrones era. I can't believe we don't have more blockbuster fantasy movies. It's
Right.
genuinely stunning to me that people still think that's risky. Like, are all the executives still the same dudes who are like, that's nerd stuff?
Actually,
Yes.
literally, probably in some cases, yes.
Have
Actually,
you
literally,
looked
probably
at
the same guys.
what makes the most money now? Nerd stuff is the biggest seller. We have so much disposable income. We're not going out to bars all the time or buying Lamborghinis. We're collecting first edition Fiend
Sure.
folios. Are
Who
you
are these
kidding
nerds
me?
that have this money? I actually just did buy a first edition Fiend folio like 2 months ago.
We cook your food. We guard you while you sleep. We have money because we built your technology.
You're saying we, as in the royal we, but like
Geeks in general.
I still don't have this. I don't.
We're the artists, not the collectors.
Well, given the success of this film, urban fantasy, and then also the current success with cyberpunk in general, and I feel like it's still going. Like we have a lot of cyberpunk stuff coming in the pipeline.
Big comeback.
Yeah, like Cyberpunk 2077 was just dropped in chat. I mean, that's going to be a huge I think that's going to be really big since it comes from The Witcher. So
let's hope.
I want to think like roughly 5 years ago, I was, asking my question, is cyberpunk relevant anymore? And it's been
more relevant
pretty awesome
than
to see
ever.
the answer be hell yes.
I'll be honest, my answer to that and to the thing about people just want something fun is that this may be good for our entertainment, but this is really shit for the world. If cyberpunk is relevant to the world, then the world's in trouble. If people like movies because they have low expectations, that's a shame.
I've wondered about cyberpunk, and isn't a big theme of cyberpunk that technology, the how technology takes us down a terrible road.
Yeah, there are no cyberpunk utopias. Because
right.
That would take the punk out of it.
I do wonder sometimes whether I still am there, Mr. Johnson, about whether or not cyberpunk has, like, in its pure form, has a lot of relevance.
Honestly, I think that particular theme of cyberpunk has kind of become less important.
The other part,
the kind of stuff that creeped people out back in the day of early cyberpunk is like, well, that's how people order stuff on Amazon now.
Yeah.
Certainly. I think the other half of cyberpunk, the whole theme of corporate and government overlords, controlling every aspect of our lives and everything, I think that certainly has more relevance than ever. So maybe that's what's...
But I think there are still deeper philosophical questions about humanity and technology that are still addressed and relevant in cyberpunk, and we're going to see become more relevant as time goes on. And
that's true. Artificial intelligence is becoming more. Like, that question is a really big question right now. So I think you're probably right.
Look at the success of Black Mirror.
Right.
Oh yeah, I was just watching.
Well,
it.
even
I'm gonna have to give that shot another show, or that show another shot.
Yeah.
I give that shot another shot.
And I just could not.
The AI stuff you see pop up all over the place, so I agree with you there. And that's also another big theme of cyberpunk. So
cyberpunk in general, when I think of the cyberpunk of the 1980s, it's totally different from what we call it now, mainly because we're now in a generation where I guess our Shadowrunners are more okay with, like, they've made it like, this is just the way it is, right? We will always be squashed. We just have to just maneuver. It's not about fighting the system. It's just about surviving and maneuvering and just letting it all go and letting them do what they want, right? Because that's kind of how it is nowadays. So, like, that's what you, like, kind of, those are the themes of cyberpunk today, I think. Where, what do you do with yourself when you're effectively nothing?
Well, that was, if you go back to old, like, Gibson stuff, you read the short stories in Burning Chrome, none of them are about changing the world. They're about surviving the world. Mm-hmm. And, as with all science fiction, all of that is just a paint job that acts as a metaphor to help explain a deeper thing, which is timeless. It just so happens that it's not just timeless now, it's timely.
Yeah.
So we're not, one of the reasons cyberpunk works and steampunk has kind of just become a vanity thing is the punk.
Sure.
Steampunk it's got Tesla coils and airships and corsets. We get it. But the punk is about resisting the system. And nowadays,
the counterculture part of it, yeah.
Yeah, whereas anybody who does steampunk, it's always lady this and count that and duke this or something. They're all nobles. They're all just rich Victorian fucks wandering around on their airships having delightful adventures. They're not the grease monkeys in the engine room, coal-stained and looking for a way to overthrow the aristocracy. That would be steampunk. Now it's just steam couture. But but cyberpunk, which, don't get me wrong, I love it. I'm friends with a few steampunk models, and I totally support them. But cyberpunk isn't just about style over substance. Thank you, cyberpunk role-playing game. But it's also about the oppression. very few people want to read a story, a cyberpunk story that's written from the perspective of the executive who runs everything. And if you do,
like Damian Knight, who wants to read that story?
Yeah, I'm definitely not writing that novel right now. But you don't, and even then, that should be a story about getting up to power and the fall from power. That's not about being at the top. It's hard to write a whole story about that. And if people cared, then immortal elves would still be the focus of the stories.
Right.
But they're not. So people resented it. Cyberpunk is about surviving in the cracks. It's about, dodging the cogs as you move through the machine. And we live in a time where those cogs are becoming all the bigger and more oppressive, where we either fall in line or fall out of society. And so cyberpunk is going to become more and more relevant as we go. We're living it. We are in the beginning of cyberpunk, and I'm not excited to say that. So that's not a good thing. I want cyber limbs and magic too, but I don't want a corporate dystopia.
Right.
I want Star Trek with elves and magic and dragons.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with Tiger Planet, who's also saying in the chat room that it's about dystopia. I mean, it's about the frag the system kind of attitude. Yeah.
If it's utopia, if it's not a dystopia, it's not punk.
Right. Exactly.
That's just how it's built. In an ideal world, you wouldn't need Shadowrunners, but you do. I wrote something when I was younger, and my mom said, "Why is this setting so grim?" And I said, "Well, Mom, if you had a setting with no problems, there wouldn't be a story to write." And she was like, "Oh no." She went back through all her books and went, "Oh no." So yeah, story follows complication, and complications come from problems. So
sure,
an entire setting full of story potential is full of bad shit happening. Cyberpunk is full of story potential,
right?
Because everything sucks.
Right. Right.
And this movie in general was just kind of like, well, here's this magic wand, here's the MacGuffin, just defend it for the next hour and a half, and throw it in a lake, or in this little use it somehow in this thing or whatever. I don't even know. It was just so irrelevant.
What was that pool?
I don't know.
It was a portal, resurrection, Lazarus pit, cross, baptism tree.
Right. So whatever that was, you hold on to it for an hour-ish, and then deliver it back to the thing.
And then where they go, they just leave the pool behind. That's not important. Like the wand is what's important.
It's on fire now.
And also,
that pool is pretty. Oh yeah.
Okay, real life. If there's this thing that if you're 1 in a million, have a chance of having amazing power, or much more likely it's just going to disintegrate you and kill you in some sort of awful way, there would not be people rushing to touch it. There might be a few people here and there that with megalomania or delusions of grandeur who think they're the chosen one, who might try to go for it and have a gang to back them up. But they had this play where everyone would reach out to do it.
I think
a lot of that was ignorance of magic.
Yeah, I think the idea was that basically nobody knows how it works, and
You'd
so
think
that's
after
what
2,000 years.
Jacoby.
Right.
Who just knows everything, despite being
still doesn't
unblooded.
plug that hole.
Right. Despite not knowing the most basic things about magic earlier on in the movie.
He knows ancient prophecies and took 2 years of Elvish in high school, and apparently knows a bunch of shit about wands. So
I took 4 years of Spanish in high school, and I got to tell you that's BS. He's not going to remember all that.
Yeah,
I remember exactly enough German to do an impression of German, or to apologize for a rude girlfriend at the
I took 4 semesters of German, and that's enough to just pronounce the words that I read, and not to understand what I'm reading.
Yeah, you're basically you learn enough to say mein Deutsch is schlecht.
Right.
Which means my German is ill. Which is as close as you could get to they'll just be like, "Oh, that's okay." It's like, "Oh, thank goodness you speak English." So, yeah, which is horrible, but it I don't know. There's just so many holes.
Yeah, guys,
and
I think we've reached the point where we have come to a decision about our feelings about this movie, and we've told everybody what those are.
It was superfluous.
I'm glad to have gone through this journey with you guys.
Yes.
Aw.
I don't regret any moment of it.
Cue sweet Lord of the Rings music.
Yeah. They definitely were like spreading the Lord of the Rings thick on there with the Dark Lord and the.
Do you see what I was saying? Like, it actually almost feels like it's set in that universe.
Yeah, like they were doing.
Just like sped up.
Yeah, it
like
really
Sauron was the Dark Lord they were talking about. That's
Right.
kind of what it felt like.
Right. I think you're right about that. But thank you, chat room, for joining us. We had some followers. Some people followed the channel while we were going on there, and early on we had some cheers. And thank you everybody for support. You're helping us out in that regard. And we had a lot of fun. There we go. Opti helping out. We love you. We had a lot of fun, I think, and or at least I did. And it sounds like the other ones did.
Yeah.
And
Jim, I think we kind of answered that question before. The general consensus is no. We would not recommend it to others.
Yep, yeah. I would not.
I had a great time though watching it with.
It was fun, yeah.
So.
Yeah.
This is definitely this is a MST 3K kind of movie. You will have a great time if you go in with your scalpel.
Yeah,
just
right.
Rip it apart. It's gonna be. This is a pinata movie.
How do I pronounce
that?
Said that,
my wife loved this movie.
Yeah, she did.
Yeah, my
Awesome.
wife loved it, and she was like giving me mean eyes as I was talking smack on it the whole time. She kept looking over, saying like, "I like that movie."
Is she? And I mean this in the. I truly do mean this in the nicest way possible, because I think my wife's the same way as I'm about to describe. But is she the type of person who just really just can enjoy all kinds of movies? Just like
no.
Really, she isn't.
She can enjoy a Will Smith movie.
Oh, okay.
And I mean that in like a popcorn way. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Sure.
You know, she just likes movies like that.
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
She likes Training Day. She likes Independence Day. She likes, whatever.
Right. Look at all these people throwing us, cheering for us right at the end. Kyuki, thank you for that big old cheer right there. And Sky Screens, the Thunderbox.
I got one last thing I can say.
Sure, and we'll close on that.
All right. The reason that Bright doesn't work but Shadowrun does, and I talked about this with my roommate. It's because you see this world and it looks so much like ours. So much like ours, culturally, technologically, fashion-wise. Humans have evolved in almost exactly the same way that they would have in our world. Except you've got 2,000 years at least of orcs, 9 races, 8 other races that should have influenced it, that should have influenced technology, accessibility, all that kind of stuff. Shadowrun works because it's built on the bones of 2,000 years, again, minimum, of human technological development, and they're still finding ways to fit trolls and orcs and elves and Naga and everything into it. This world has had all the time in the world to adapt to it. How is there no Magitech? How is a dragon just casually flying by and there's no like plane escort or something? It feels wedged in.
Shadowrun. Did you say that? That might be the laziest part of this movie. Is when they went, how do we explain this? And then somebody goes, we don't have to. We'll just add them in there like they've always been there.
Yeah.
Shadowrun, we took the time. Jordan and the original crew took the time to say, no, I'm going to forcefully wedge fantasy into your world, and we'll just see how you adapt. And that adaptation is part of what makes that setting so interesting. Bright, they're still figuring this shit out after 2,000 years. And it still looks like it's all oil and water.
Right.
Still looks like LA.
Yeah. Except for big, I assume, elf tower. That I don't know. That's a pretty glaring thing to me.
If you watch the magic documentary thing that I linked to you earlier, if you go on YouTube, or on somewhere, you can find like this little documentary about like magic in the Bright universe, like from within the Bright universe. And it does a absolutely piss poor job. It just reinforces the laziness
Every
of
problem.
the world. And it's meant to do the opposite. It's meant to be like, no, this totally works, guys. Look, and it just makes you go. You must have spent 5 seconds on that. That's so.
If I shine a light on it, it'll make more sense. And then it's just a giant question mark.
Right.
You shine the light on it, and there's no light.
Yeah.
At least it's consistent.
Yes,
it's
consistently lazy.
It is a movie of great brightness revealing nothing.
Yep. The
Yeah,
Thunderbox says, I hear Elf Tower has a cool shopping mall. I think it does, and that is a good comment to close on.
Moral of the writing, bad writing is bad. I think that's the...
Yeah, that's true. Sky of Screens really does put the cap on it. Moral night, bad writing is bad. Thank you guys so much. I think whenever Bright Part 2 comes out, we'll do this again.
Sure. Bright harder.
Yeah. Bright 2.
Even brighter.
Yeah.
The Bright strikes back.
Blinding. Even.
Bright 2, darkness ascending.
Bright 2.
Bright better.
Bright hard with a vengeance.
Bright 2 without Will Smith.
All right. I'm gonna put an end to this madness. Thank you guys, and bye-bye.
Bye.